Millions of EU citizens are looking to leave their native countries to escape the 2030 agenda that's being pushed onto them. Today I'm going to break down what the 2030 agenda is all about and the effect it has on European societies. And most importantly, what you can do to change the trajectory of your life. The first point I wanted to address in this video is taxation in Europe and how policies that are created inside the EU Parliament are changing the trajectory not only of the European Union, but the trajectory of EU citizens as a whole. The very head of the European Union, the EU Parliament, is orchestrating tax harmonization pressure that has led to an increase in personal and corporate tax rates across the European Union. Low tax countries like Bulgaria, Romania, and even Cyprus are being pressured to increase their taxes. The tax pressure that's applied by the EU Parliament on European Union countries is not the only thing that we had seen come out of the EU Parliament. We had seen more and more pressure being applied on different schemes as well. Residency by investment programs that have changed the landscape of many European Union countries forever. A very prominent example is Portugal, where the residency by investment scheme has attracted thousands and thousands and thousands of foreign investors back into the continent, more specifically Portugal, where many wealthy immigrants now live. Wealth taxes are increasing across the European Union with the aim to extract more money from everyday citizens. It is not just the wealthy that's being targeted by wealth tax hikes. It's also the middle class that's about to suffer from these legislations. Countries like Norway and Spain have introduced wealth taxes for the richest people in their societies, ranging from 0.16% to 3.5%. The EU emissions trading system has introduced carbon taxes that not only affect businesses but also people across the European Union. The push for green energy definitely originated inside of Europe, and its very arms have reached geographic locations well outside the European continent. We had seen an increasingly greater effort, even in South Asia, to influence South Asian nations to turn green. Obviously, there is a whole industry behind green energy, and the push for green energy is to expedite the fourth industrial revolution, not only in Europe, but in the entire world. VAT, value-added taxes, are increasing across the European Union. You are going to pay a VAT, value-added tax, on purchases that you make on certain products, and the tax rates are typically anywhere from 20 to 24%. The highest VAT that I've personally witnessed across the European Union is actually in Greece, with a VAT tax rate of 24% on many goods and services that you purchase on a daily basis. You might think that a 24% VAT tax rate is high and unnecessary, but it is a vital component. Many EU member states face ballooning pension deficits. And these pension deficits are not just prevalent in one specific European Union country, they are very prevalent across the European Union. Countries like Spain, Greece, France are particularly vulnerable in this day and age because these countries have an incredibly high median age and a shrinking workforce. It is true that the wealthier EU nations have a better pension system than the poorer EU nations. The raising of retirement age has led to massive protests across the European Union, including France, due to the ever-increasing pension deficits in many European Union countries. Some nations are now cutting benefits, which naturally leads to retirees having less benefits and more insecurity. Infrastructure is crumbling across many Eastern European nations. While many Eastern European nations, including EU Eastern European countries, have incredibly great tax systems that induce entrepreneurs to embark on new business journeys on the eastern side of Europe, it is very prevalent that the lack of developed infrastructure is leading to many problems. Oftentimes, public spaces and areas are poorly maintained across the European Union, and you could argue that the lack of funding, the lack of available capital is the catalyst to this very outcome. The 2030 climate agenda is what really drives the fourth industrial revolution inside the European continent. The EU is home to very ambitious green energy policies, including the aim to cut carbon emissions by 55% by 2030. Naturally, the push toward green energy has led to financial struggles across many households in the European Union. A transition from conventional energy sources to green energy is very costly, and middle-class Europeans bear the highest cost, like it always is. Agricultural restrictions are putting many farmers out of business. We have seen protests across the European Union, specifically in the more developed nations, where farmers are about to be the past of European history, further weakening the European Union as a whole. The electric vehicle push is very prominent across the European Union, with many countries banning the purchase of new gas-operated and diesel vehicles. All this is an effort to further advance and expedite the fourth industrial revolution. The truth is that electric vehicles are not practical in many European Union nations. The cost of purchasing an electric vehicle is beyond possible for many EU nationals, including those living in southern European Union countries, where lower median salaries are the norm. I wanted to make a few more remarks on the cost of living crisis across the European Union. The ongoing war in Ukraine has led to a lot of issues with Europe's energy supply. Europe used to be very dependent on Russian gas and energy, something that has changed very recently. It seems to me as if the biggest beneficiary of this war is not Russia, neither Europe, but the United States of America. Due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Europe has seen one of the highest energy prices in recorded history. The rising inflation, which started at the very beginning of the past crisis, has led to higher food prices across the European Union. More specifically, countries in Eastern Europe have been affected the most. Some Eastern European countries had seen doubled food prices in very short periods of time. While the median wage in many European countries has not increased, food prices and other prices have increased tremendously since the past crisis began. Countries like France and Netherlands oppose the Mercosur EU FTA with the argument that there's just less regulation in the South American continent than in Western Europe, making Europe less competitive than its South American counterpart. The housing crisis is another very prominent point that I wanted to add underneath the cost of living crisis umbrella. Millions of EU nationals have seen unaffordable rent prices in major European metropolitans, including those in Spain, Portugal, Holland, Germany, and many others. It is true that speculative foreign investment, such as residency by investment, has contributed to the inflation of local housing markets across major European metropolitans. Very little has been done by governments to restore old housing prices that made the life of average European Union citizens more affordable. Another reason why you want to consider escaping the European Union before the 2030 agenda is being fully implemented is because of the current and ongoing immigration crisis in the EU. High migration rates, specifically those from Africa and the Middle East, have put a tremendous burden on the EU system, making public services unaffordable for many EU nationals. Furthermore, the demographic shifts that we witness in Europe in this very century have led to increased criminality across many major European metropolitans and even rural areas as well. Integration and cultural preservation have been placed on the back burner across many European countries. Cities like Brussels, Amsterdam, Vienna, Berlin, Barcelona, and many others have been affected by the current migration crisis. The new picture of parallel societies is becoming more prominent across the entire European Union. National legal systems are being challenged. Sharia law is operating in many EU countries. Before we end this video, I wanted to make another note on authoritarian changes inside the European Union. Digital surveillance is on the rise across the European Union, especially when it comes to digital IDs. Now, EU nationals and residents also fear the possible implementation of a central bank digital currency that obviously comes from the EU Parliament, the very head of the EU umbrella. Mandatory compliance, such as the GDPR Act, has raised eyebrows on many EU nationals. Companies in breach of the General Data Protection Regulation enforced by the EU may face heavy penalties, including legal sanctions. Now that we have addressed all the uncertainties surrounding the EU 2030 agenda, what can you do to change the trajectory of your life in the coming years? If you have a location-independent business and income, you may consider relocating to a geographic location where regulation is kept at a bare minimum. There are many countries and jurisdictions with far less surveillance and control than the European Union. The EU, a continent that was once known for its freedom, its democracy, is slowly but steadily transforming into a union that is unimaginable. This situation is very comparable to what we had witnessed during former wars, where the wealthiest of the wealthiest had the opportunities, the resources, the connections, and the money to depart the European Union. Actually, back in the day, the continent of Europe, for a more geographically ideal destination, such as the United States of America. The past wars had created mass influx of European refugees into the continent of South America. South America is home to some of the most liberal visa and immigration policies in the entire world, inviting EU nationals running away from current 2030 agenda policies into the region to apply and obtain residency, which comes with an incredibly diversified spectrum of benefits, including foreign land ownership, foreign property ownership, foreign company ownership, and many more benefits. If you're interested in relocating to a geographic destination where you can preserve peace of mind, where you can preserve your wealth, and most importantly, live the best time of your life, please contact us. You should see our website displayed right on the screen. Book a consultation with us today. We've also added a link in the description of the video. We appreciate your attendance. Thank you so much for watching Nomad Elite, and we look forward to welcoming you to our next video.